Greetings, GameCola faithful, and welcome to the GameCola podcast. This is podcast number 116, and I am your host and podcast commander, Joseph Martin. With me today, we have...
Hi, I'm Anna Bryniarski. I'm a staff writer and also GameCola's social media trash queen.
Hi, I'm James Pelster. I am a staff writer as well as the assistant manager of the GameCola YouTube channel, and I suck at Mega Man.
Speaking of guys. Guys.
Yes.
Mega Man 11.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part of the podcast where Joe talks for an entire...
There were Mega Mans. There were 10 of them.
Yes.
And now there is 11. If you haven't heard, you get ready to hear everything. But if you haven't heard, recently, for Mega Man's 30th anniversary, there was a big live stream event, and at the end of it, Capcom revealed that in late 2018, they're going to come out with Mega Man 11, a full-fledged sequel and continuation of the classic Mega Man series. And I am very, very, very excited about this fact that is true and cannot be taken away from me. Mega Man is sort of one of the staple series of GameCola.net and of my early time on the podcast, if you listened to like 85 through 90. While I was getting used to hosting the podcast, talking about Mega Man was sort of my fallback. So if you've listened to those parts, you're probably pretty familiar with how much I enjoy and can talk about Mega Man.
Yeah.
So I could talk about pretty much anything about this new Mega Man game for a really long time. So I actually wanted to ask you guys, as people who have very minimal experience with a Mega Man game, and that's probably a lot of our podcast listeners because we can't expect everyone to have played every game, and anyone who's super invested in Mega Man probably already knows a lot about it. So as people who are not as invested in Mega Man as I am, what questions would you have about the new Mega Man game that's coming out?
Probably whether they'll keep the difficulty as Nintendo hard as it's always been, or whether they'll be, changing it up. Because I know Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10 for WiiWare, they had like an easy mode and a hard mode, which is something that is, I believe, new to the classic Mega Man series.
I can confirm for you that the difficulty settings are returning, and there's actually a fourth one that they're adding, which is labeled as Newcomer. So there's 4 difficulty levels: Newcomer, Easy, Normal, and Hard. I think that's how they're named.
Huh.
It might be kind of weird because the interviews that I heard that from were from the producer and the lead designer, who both speak Japanese. So those are already translations, and so the literal wording of it might not be the same. But the idea is that there's an easy mode, and then there's like an easy mode.
Really easy. Very easy.
Because, one of the things that they've been talking about a lot in interviews and stuff is that they are trying to do the very difficult thing of appealing to the older audience while also garnering a new, younger fan base of kids. So they're trying to make something that is accessible to both. So they're trying to include that hard difficulty that everyone's familiar with in the hard mode, while still making a game that can be played by your average kid whose skill level is very different than your average video game playing kid in the late 80s, early 90s, where if you're playing video games back then, there's a certain level of investment and expectation that's required that was probably a little bit more than you would expect nowadays.
Kind of makes sense then why they've been waiting so long to bring in another one, because I mean, for a while I guess there probably was not as much demand for that kind of game that was worth their time to try and invest all this stuff into. But with some of the sort of the recent resurgence in that kind of genre of game recently, what with Mighty Number 9 and a couple of the others, I think it was like 20XX, I think was the name of another one. But some of those titles, I think Capcom kind of saw them and they were like, hey, this 20XX game at least managed to find a foothold with both Mega Man, existing Mega Man fans as well as, some newcomers. So they were like, hey, maybe now's the right time to try and figure out how to do that ourselves.
Well, yeah, and even with like Mighty Number 9, love it or hate it, there are, I will admit, even though I am not fond of that game in any way. There are people who enjoy it. But even looking at that, even looking at it in the most negative sense, it very much at least demonstrated that there is a public interest in a Mega Man style game.
Yeah.
So I think like even then, like if there's just internal discussions of like, yeah, we'd love to make a new Mega Man game, but we need something to show that this isn't a risky investment. And that was probably like someone could have a PowerPoint in the meeting and just be like, there is our proof that people will buy this game at the very least.
Yeah, they people have already spent $4 million.
People are investing in this game rather than purchasing a product. So if we just give them a product to buy,
Yeah,
they'll probably be pretty into it.
I'm kind of wondering why they decided to switch to the 2.5D perspective, like with Mighty Number 9, because I think originally, at least in the concept art, Mighty Number 9 was a standard 2D, and then they switched to 2.5D when they were actually producing it. I'm wondering why Capcom decided to do the same, given the success of titles like Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10, and even with the success of the two Legacy collections, where, basically just bringing that art style back, the classic 2D sprite-based design. Because if it were me, and I saw the fact that a game like Mighty Number 9, which, its visuals were one of the things that were usually, criticized, not super heavily, but they were definitely criticized. And if it were me, I would have seen that, and then I would have seen the success of a game like 20XX, which I believe is sprite-based. I could be wrong there, but because I know more about Mighty Number 9 than 20XX. But I personally would have tried to distance myself from that kind of a design, and you stuck with something that we know works. Although, again, I guess it might be because they're, again, trying to appeal to both an old and a new audience, and they kind of want to have some slightly flashier or, more modern style graphics to try and do that. But I don't know, it just seems a bit odd that, especially considering that, pixel art games still do pretty darn well for themselves nowadays. So it just seems a little unusual.
So I do actually have an answer for this. So the big thing that they have been hammering home about this in all of the interviews and press release material is that this is meant to be a new start for the Mega Man series. It is the beginning of a continuation of the classic series rather than another callback. Right? They're saying Mega Man is going to continue from now on. We are updating Mega Man for the modern era. It is sort of like the same way that, not abandoning the past, but I would imagine a similar design philosophy to Mario Odyssey, because Mario Odyssey, right, is very much a modernization of the classic 3D Mario style, with a ton using the catalog of 3D Marios as a baseline, and taking all of those things and saying, okay, we're not just making something brand new, but rather we are modernizing and updating all of these mechanics from previous games into a modern game instead of just being stuck in iterating on the past. So the movement into 2.5D is supposed to represent a modernization, instead of Mega Man 9 and 10 were very much they were cool, but they were also saying hey, the older ones were better, is sort of the implication.
Yeah, they were
of it,
throwbacks. They weren't continuations so much.
Right. Especially Mega Man 9 was
Yeah,
Mega Man 2 was the best.
The slide.
Here it is. Mega Man 9 was Mega Man 2.
Yes.
And then Mega Man 10 was Mega Man 2.
No, I think it was Mega Man. I think it was Mega Man 4 too, because they had the Charge Buster in that, right?
They had Proto Man in it.
Oh no, they added the slide back in 10, so it was like Mega Man 3 too.
Nope, they added that for Proto Man.
No, Mega Man could slide in Mega Man 10. I thought.
Could he? I get the distinct remember.
I have Mega Man Legacy Collection 2. I'll check that one at some point. I could have sworn that they just removed the slide from Mega Man
No,
9.
it looks like he is. All these things are saying Mega Man cannot slide in Mega Man 9 and 10. Proto Man wasn't DLC in Mega Man 10 though, so you could just play as
Oh,
Proto
that's
Man.
right. But Proto Man was still the hard mode.
Yeah, because you took twice damage and knockback.
Yeah, that really annoyed me because it's like I kind of wish that Proto Man was a little more cosmetic actually, because like it's like I always like the concept of being able to play as Proto Man or Base actually. I really enjoy playing as Base.
So yeah, they're really trying to update the series and like bring it into like, hey, we're not just calling back to old games. We are continuing to make new games with new ideas. And so there is new stuff in this game aside from just the graphical translation. You've got Mega Man visually changes besides just changing color now when he switches weapons, which I think is really cool and I think is a great like little update to it, because that's the sort of thing that you could keep the same for consistency, but now that you have a higher graphical fidelity, why not go in and say, hey, give him a little additive, like for the block weapon that he gets in the trailer, why not add little blocky stuff on his, I mean, it looks better than how I'm describing it, but
I see what you mean.
They add stuff to it because you can now, and that's cool. There's also some boss fights, so it's not just, as far as I can tell, it is, at least for this one instance, it is not just cosmetic 2.5D. That the additional perspective is used. There's a mini boss fight that uses it, and it looks like it uses it very well. There's basically this big arm that swings as part of one of the attacks of the mini bosses, but it's like this very slow and deliberate. Your jump lasts much longer than the hitbox does, and so like it's pretty easy to dodge without being sort of weirded out by like, okay, but where is this, like because the hitbox, right, would just appear at some point, right, in the thing, but it's really clear when the hitbox is there, and so it looks like it's being used well. So it's not just cosmetic; it's going to be utilized. I think this is also like one of the reasons why we haven't heard about the Mega Man TV show in a while, is because I think they're trying to line these up. And it may be that the Mega Man TV show got further along in development, and they're like, well, let's just hold off on it a little bit and try to get these going at about the same time. So, because Mega Man also has a little bit, now we don't know if there's going to be voice acting, because I would wonder if they would be wary about that with the fact that Mega Man 8 exists. But Mega Man,
and the fact that Mighty Number 9 exists.
But Mega Man does have a voice. There is a shout that plays.
Yeah, I remember hearing that in the trailer. Didn't they do that in Mega Man Powered Up as well?
Mega Man Powered Up had voices too. Mega Man Powered Up was fully voice acted.
Yeah, but I mean that one wasn't bad. Like I don't think the voice acting
it wasn't.
It was bad. Like that was.
It was all right, but it was also a very different style. It was very much going in the cutesy chibi. This is Mega Man definitely. I mean, I think it might be the same voice as the TV show, which I think is the voice of not Tara Strong original Ben 10, but like the voice of Ben 10 from all of the sequel series. Which is kind of funny, which would make sense too, because it's being produced by the same people who produced the original Ben 10. So it's being going back to the Mega Man cartoon, which I also know a lot about. It's being produced by Man of Action Studios. The people behind it are people who worked on the original Ben 10, which isn't necessarily the same set of people who worked on the sequel series Ben 10, Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, Omniverse. The parts of Ben 10 where
I never watched Ben 10, so
Ben 10 kind of went on forever,
yeah,
and then it got rebooted.
I know about it. I just never actually.
I watched it a lot as a kid. But the original series was pretty good, and I think if it's the same people who are behind the original series and not necessarily behind like Omniverse, which was, I think Omniverse suffered from the fact that this show had been going on for way too long, and it didn't have the setting to really support that, so things just kind of got crazy. Like, there's an episode in there where, I mean, the universe basically ends, and they're like, oh, we fixed it, and it's like, okay, well, then what stakes are you going to have now? This is like halfway, this is like season 5, and there's like 10 total seasons of this. My point is that Yeah, so I think they're tying it in with this show. The voice, there's some voice similarity. They're looking to add things while still using, like, all the interviews have talked about, like there have been things where they talk about, mention specific mechanics, plot positives, even negatives. Like, they've mentioned things about older Mega Man games that they want to do differently. Like, they've said, like, they want to make sure that the boss order, the weaknesses are intuitive. And the example they keep using,
Yeah, that was always a big problem in some like games like 3.
but yeah, 3 was weird because there wasn't like a circle order. It was like 2 circles.
And also most of the bosses weren't like elemental
Mm-hmm.
or didn't have weaknesses that like would make sense by conventional
Mm-hmm.
logic. Like, how would you know that? I mean, like the most logical one is that Hard Knuckle beats Top Man because of course if you punch a top it's gonna fall over. Like that's some very strange logic to use, and even then I'm not sure if that's even why it's the weakness.
So the example they used actually was like, okay, we have a knight, we have a centaur, we have you have Yamato Man, the samurai. Who is weak to what in
Yeah.
that situation? And for Mega Man 6, it made sense because the main thesis of the Robot Masters in that game was there's one from each different region. They really pushed the, like, each Robot Master is designed by a fan sort of thing, and so that's something
Yeah.
that you're going to run into with that sort of philosophy no matter what. But so, like, stuff like that. They mentioned they talked about Mega Man 8 and how the more complex animations made the controls feel worse. They didn't say it quite outright like that. I think they mostly talked about, like, how there was extra animation for knockback, which meant that you couldn't get back into it as fast. And
I mean, Mega Man also just looked like he was made out of rubber in
well,
that
right,
game.
but they were talking
So,
more specifically about the animations rather than the literal graphical quality.
oh, I see. So you mean like the animation, like the movements and stuff, like with the way that they set that up. I see.
Yeah. So, like, they weren't afraid to talk about things that they wanted to improve or change from other games. So, and like they said, like, the game director said that he played through, to prepare for this, he played through all 10 Mega Man games. The general, like, idea that I feel like they're trying to convey to the older fan base, right? Because the younger fan base is going to be catered to through advertisements. But through this, like, sort of
Yeah.
press presence, the message that it seems like they're trying to convey is, hey, this might be different, but it is definite. At the very least, this is, like, intentional. We're not being lazy. If we get something wrong, it means that we just had a good idea that didn't work out, as opposed to we didn't
Yeah.
try. Because, like, and I think part of this showed through 10 a little bit and maybe 9 a bit, but I think not as much 9. But, like, it's really easy. It would be really easy these days to make a phoned in Mega Man game, right? I mean, we've seen with the rise of, and my point that I'm going to make at the end of this statement is not that these are phoned in games. It's just meant to highlight a different point. You see,
Yeah.
make a good Mega Man level series 1, 2, and the third one that is coming up. That is, I think, sort of in its early stages. You've got
Yeah.
lots of other Mega Man fan games with the 8-bit art style. Mega
Oh, yeah.
Man Maker. Like, once you get to a maker category of your games,
Yeah.
it's the fact that one person or, like, a small group of people working for free can make something on their own means that a company that's, like, has resources and can pay people could really easily make something that meets all the base requirements for being a Mega Man game while being completely phoned in terms of design and quality, right? So it would,
Yeah, and in just enjoyment,
yeah.
like even actually, I would say that there are even in Mega Man 9 at the very least. I think there are some spots where you can see that they did cut corners, like they were mainly just trying to cater to the retro crowd. And my case in point for that is the fact that they reused a bunch of songs from Mega Man 2 in Mega Man 9. Like they didn't compose a new menu theme, a new game over theme, a new Wily intro, like tower theme, or any of that stuff. They just literally reused the songs from Mega Man 2, which is the most like iconic
Right.
game of the NES series. And the rest of the game I think is pretty well made, and like they designed it with a lot of they put a lot of effort into it. But I think that kind of, just that little bit, I think that also may kind of show what you mean, I think.
I mean, Mega Man 9 does also have some pretty good songs. I really like the Wily Machine,
Oh, yeah.
the one that like incorporates an alarm into the music. Like, it's got some great music too.
Oh, Tornado Man's theme is amazing.
But like I said before, Mega Man 9's main problem, which is something that I think the rest of the series is, I mean, what Mega Man 11 is trying to avoid for any of the games, is Mega Man 9 was the sequel to Mega Man 2. It was saying Mega Man 2 was the game that we are going to try to emulate the success of, instead of other games where they've been sequels to all the games that came before them. So like each of those games looked at the successes and failures. I would say up through Mega Man 6, all of those games looked at the successes and failures of all the preceding classic Mega Man games, and that's what informed their current game. Probably more influenced by the one immediately before them, but still looking back at all of them. I mean, like, you'll see lots of people say, like, Mega Man 4 has a lot of interesting similarities to Mega Man 2. Mega Man 5 has a lot of interesting similarities to Mega Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like definitely that intentionality there of like looking at the whole series up to it. Mega Man 7 was more of a sequel. It was, I mean, like, narratively, and there were certain things where it was like, yeah, this is a sequel to Mega Man 6. But Mega Man 7 was also kind of a sequel to Mega Man X. There's lots of things in Mega Man 7 where it's like, you kind of just put that in there because X had that. Like, the intro stage is like a really bad version of Mega Man X's intro stage, basically.
Yeah.
And then, like, Bass is very clearly, like, his, at least from a gameplay standpoint, his involvement is basically the same as Vile's from Mega Man X. Like, where you fight him at the beginning, you can lose in the Vile when you have to lose, in Bass is when you don't have to lose, but you could still have that same situation where he beats you, and then you fight him, you re-challenge him at the end of the game with powered up abilities.
Yeah.
That, and then Mega Man 8 was a sequel to anime. Just in general, it wasn't really a sequel to any Mega Man games. And I feel like Mega Man 8, like, it definitely tried to do something new, do new things, but not in a way that was really grounded in any sort of thing. Like, every single stage of Mega Man 8 is basically a gimmick stage.
Yeah, like, it didn't take an existing, like, concept or something from Mega Man and evolve it, or a specific concept. Like, I mean, there's, you could say that there were gimmick stages in, like, Mega Man 7 or or Mega Man 6, I mean, like, with some of those count bomb puzzles in some of the rooms.
But, like, count bomb puzzles were, like, a staple gimmick, right? Like, those...
Yeah, like, that was just a thing that they did. And and then also, like, yeah, they just threw in extra gimmicks that just were kind of out of nowhere. I don't know. I feel like most of the stages in Mega Man, in the previous NES Mega Man games, the whole stage was not one gimmick.
Right.
Like, they might have had a gimmick in a third or maybe even one half of a stage, but the rest of the stage was still just, the classic Mega Man platforming, jump and shoot kind of deal. And, weren't, like, whole halves of stages in Mega Man 8 like that weird sledding or the weird skiing mini game?
In Blizzard Man stage, there's 2 big sections of it, and then in the castle stages, there's another set of them. It's awful. It's so bad. It's
there's
terrible.
nothing wrong with reusing gimmicks and making them more difficult, but at the same time, they're just kind of out of nowhere.
They're just like, they're also like just all over the game. If there were a couple gimmick stages, it's not that there are gimmicks in Mega Man, like, that's fine, but like, it was like every stage, and a lot of them were bad. There were some good ones.
And as a result of them trying to come up with a new gimmick for each stage, they couldn't develop any individual gimmicks, maybe aside from the sledding. In fact, I would say probably the sledding or skiing minigame is probably the most developed out of all of them, because it's like, that's the one everybody knows about. Because, they have it in 3 different parts at least, and if it even shows up in the Wily stages, then that's a sign that they probably put more time and effort into developing that gimmick if they're going to reuse it in the Wily stages.
Oh yeah, no, they reuse the worst gimmicks in the stages too. It's like so spot on. Like, these are all of the gimmicks I hated the most that have come back in Mega Man 8. And so then you get to Mega Man 9, which is trying to be Mega Man 2, and then you get to Mega Man 10, which was trying to be Mega Man 2, but not the same way 9 was. And so Mega Man 10 felt kind of aimless to me.
I actually prefer Mega Man 8 to Mega Man 10 to Mega Man 9, actually. I feel like it wasn't trying as hard to cater to the hardcore,
I would agree with that.
like, fans, because Mega Man 9, from what I understand, like, I've tried playing some Mega Man 9, that game is hard. Like, that was one of the reasons why Mega Man 10 added the difficulty options, is because people were like, okay, even some of the classic Mega Man fans were like, alright, I like this throwback, but anybody who wasn't really good at Mega Man is going to have a lot of trouble. So I feel like Mega Man 10 was kind of like them easing back a little bit. Like, they were like, okay, we went a little bit too far trying to recreate the extreme nostalgia. And as a result, I think they were like, hey, maybe we alienated some more people than we were trying to.
Yeah, the things that it's more of a, the weapons don't really have any cohesion to me. There's like a couple good ones, and then like the rest are just kind of garbage.
Well, I wouldn't say that most of the weapons in Mega Man 9 and 10 are garbage.
No,
I like a
was
lot
thinking
of those
about
weapons. Heck, make a good Mega Man level contest uses a bunch of the newer weapons.
But I think, I don't know which ones are changed. I can't remember off the top of my head. But a lot of the weapons or at least some of the weapons in Make a Good Mega Man level, are changed in terms of how they function mechanically. But like there are ones where, like Water Shield, which doesn't work. Water Shield is just so bad. And like even then, like sometimes they can be good. Like Thunderwool, right? Thunderwool is used to make a good Mega Man level, and it's good, right? Like there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with Thunderwool in the levels there.
Yeah.
The thing is that in the Make a Good Mega Man level, people thought about Thunderwool and how it could be used in a stage. In Mega Man 10, there are very few situations where the positives of Thunderwool come into effect.
Yeah, that's true.
The stages weren't designed.
You got a fair point there.
So like it's sort of a give and take. Like you could have the most fun weapon concept in existence, but then if you don't build levels around using it, it's not going to be fun and it's not going to be useful. Which is why like Mega Man 6, like the weapons themselves may not be a lot of people's favorite, but like if you play those games and use the weapons, you can tell like the weird arc of Tomahawk's man's weapon with like it goes down a little bit and then up. It's like that looks like it shouldn't be useful at all. It looks like how could you ever hit anything with that? But there's so many enemies in that game that are designed like just perfectly to be hit by that weapon based on their placement in the stages. Windman's stage is a really good example of there are lots of places where it's really easy to use Tomahawk Man's weapon in there, and it's a lot of fun to use it because it's designed intentionally.
Oh, and then in Blizzard Man stage, wait, hang on. Did you say Blizzard Man?
I might have said Blizzard. 8? I meant whatever. Frost. I think it's Frost. It's one of the ice ones in Mega Man 8. I don't.
Oh.
No, Freeze Man is 7. Freeze Man is 7. Chill Man is 10.
Yeah, I think Frost Man was in 8. Okay, yeah. So yeah, but Blizzard Man stage in Mega Man 6, they have like these little like curling iron enemies, and if you had the Rush power adapter, you could actually punch them, and if you hit them with a low power punch, like a quick fast one, rather, because they kind of come at you out of nowhere, so they expect that you're just gonna like just instantly react and just tap B to punch at them rather than charging up. And if you do that, they actually change direction and turn around and fly back and crash into each other, and they both blow up. And there's like other instances where enemies do that same thing, so you can tell that the enemies, they clearly designed, even just the enemies themselves were by design, were able to be defeated in multiple different ways, depending on what weapons you're using and that kind of stuff. And heck, when I used to play Mega Man 6, I would basically, the first thing I would do is I would go and get the Rush Jet adapter, and I would just play the entire game in the Rush Jet adapter, just because I loved the weapon so much. Like,
even bosses?
And that was just so much fun. You could still have fun just running through the game using just one weapon, because of the amount of just potential it had, even if it wasn't necessarily useful or utilitarian use. If it was just for, hey, I want to try this out, it was still fun to just kind of go romping around and experimenting what you could do with it.
You didn't do it for the bosses, though,
No,
right?
no. That. Well, actually, I can't remember which one it was, but I did actually, I think, beat one of the bosses.
Flame Man
with the jet
is
adapter.
one that you could do. Flame Man is the only one that I've done because I've done like sort of playthroughs experimenting with using only the adapters in Mega Man 6, and there are situations where I was trying to see like, is there any benefit to, because like really you should go to Flame Man and get the power adapter first. But I wanted to see if like starting out with the jet adapter, like how that was. So I've fought Flame Man with the jet adapter. It is pretty straightforward because like being up in the air actually makes it pretty easy to avoid pretty much all of his attacks. But it takes a very long time because you only do 1 damage with each shot. We have been talking about Mega Man for about half an hour now, which is how much I said I was going to do this for. So we can start wrapping things up. But if you have any questions about Mega Man 11 that you would like me to talk about, because I'm looking very deep in this game, I'm trying to write some sort of summary article of all the Mega Man 11 stuff I have sort of gathered. I was originally going to do a trailer analysis, but then there's like so much more other content. I'm gonna try to do something, and I might just like focus on different categories. So if you have anything about Mega Man 11 that you're interested, you'd like to hear more about, you'd like me to talk about either on the podcast or in an article, we'll say this again at the end of the podcast, but send us an email at podcast@gamecola.net, and that'll get to me, and I can read it, and whatever is the best thing to happen with that email will be the thing that happens with that email. Speaking of emails, friends, we have 2 GameCola Faithful fan emails that we get to read today. Who is excited? I am excited. Whoop doop doo. Skeep it up doo. So, starting off with our first one from GameCola Faithful. Your mom is a boss, written out like a name, who has written into the show. Thank you, your mom. Do I just call you your mom?
I think
or do I call you like
correct.
Ms. Boss?
Yeah, Mr. is a boss. Or Mrs. maybe, I don't know.
So she writes, she does have an actual name, but she has requested to be referred to by this pseudonym. From Mrs. DeBoss, we have, hey everyone, I love listening to the podcast whenever I'm multitasking or usually drawing. Thank you. I appreciate. It's always nice to hear that people are integrating the podcast into the stuff that they do in their life. She goes on to say, I've been attempting to draw every main character from the Danganronpa franchise. There's so many. At face. I can't, like, it's an at symbol and underscore and another at symbol.
That's just like a dizzy face, like, kind of like,
Yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody has the perfect picture in their head of this face. And I came across Sumiki, whom is the only character I've had to redraw so far due to messing up the body anatomy. So my question is drawn from that experience. What character from any media, video games, comics, etc., and we're going to talk about video games because it's the GameCola podcast, so stay on topic, everybody. So you listening?
Would it be considered on topic if we talk about cola? If that's your logic, we are the GameCola podcast.
I mean, here's the thing. What character from any media has their body proportions so out of whack that it makes you question how they were officially greenlit? And she writes, yaoi hands count in this regard. But so if you have any sodas whose body proportions are so out of whack, I would be happy to hear that.
Say like the Santa on like the Christmas time Coca-Cola cans.
But that's not a soda.
It is a cola.
It is not. But I mean, like, Santa is not a cola. He might be holding one, but he is not.
No,
a
but
cola.
we're not saying that. We're not looking for a game and where the physical game is out of proportion.
Right, but we're looking at something within.
Yeah, so I think my logic still stands.
If like some movie actor was holding a video game, that wouldn't like make them relevant.
Unless the movie actor was out of proportion. In which case,
No, I still don't think that would count. I still don't think that would count, James. Anyway, why don't you give us some of your experience? Because I don't know as much about Danganronpa.
yes.
So why don't you tell our listeners a bit about the series, and then perhaps some information regarding to the struggles that your mom is a boss is encountering right now.
I'm not quite sure what, perhaps the proportions are of Mikan or Sumiki, I should say, specifically that she's having trouble drawing, although I know that obviously it being a kind of, they don't skimp on the fan service in that series, so, some of the characters have probably what I would say is, anime style busts, and I'd imagine that could probably throw off, someone who's used to drawing more traditional proportions. I think that would probably have a chance to throw you off as well. And also some of them have like ridiculously long hair and other stuff. So I think
The
that might
hair on
also
this
just,
one,
especially since hair is, I'd imagine that hair and kind of being on, your head is probably sometimes where people start, and thus if the proportions for that are not very realistic, it could kind of you might be unaware to if it's throwing off how you're drawing the rest of the character afterwards. I know that there are some characters in that where at least how they appear and how they're supposed to appear, or like according to some of their stats, don't exactly make a lot of sense. Like, for example, another character from Danganronpa 2 is Hajime Hinata, and he is, I think, he's a pretty skinny guy, and yet despite that, according to his bio, he is the third largest bust size out of all the characters in that game, and and the one above him is a little bit more broad-shouldered, but the guy just above that is like ridiculous. He looks like he could be like a super mega professional football player or something, compared to like this other guy who's basically like a twig. And this guy is apparently like the third biggest male chest size in the game. So I can see why a lot of that stuff is probably very difficult to draw and just consider. And of course with a lot of anime characters, especially girls probably having really long hair, again, like I mentioned, that's probably got to make things really difficult.
Yeah, this character, I'm just looking up on Google Images. Like, her whole thing seems to be like this bandage motif.
She's a nurse.
And so, like, but it's like the kind of bandages where it's like basically mummy wrapping. And so, like, her hair kind of looks like that. Like, it's got this like flat sort of like these like straps, almost. Like, it looks like, aside from color, it's purple, not white. But like it looks like these like thin bandages sort of coming off her head. I could see how that would be an issue. But as far as like body proportions go in terms of like anime stuff, that in terms of just strictly that, this seems pretty tame.
It might also be because like her hair is not like a uniform size. Like all of these different sort of like strips of hair, they're all vastly different lengths. Like the ones near the top of her, like it doesn't even look like I don't think it's physically possible for somebody to cut their hair like that. Like, I don't know, like, unless you, like, intentionally do it, like, that is not a natural hairstyle, one way or the other. Like, that is a very, like, I would almost say sculpted, almost, like, in order to make it look like that. And again, with, judging different lengths of various body parts and stuff like that, using, something that's usually fairly uniform, the hair, that could probably be a pretty big issue.
Looking at some more of these, her leg length might be a little weird.
Do you think so?
I don't know, but it's hard to tell because most of the stuff that has her legs is like fan stuff. I'm guessing that this game is mostly
you mostly just see like from the waist up.
Yeah, medium shots. So that I don't know, but it's certainly not as bad, very bad as some of the stuff I've seen. And let's get ready to get topical again. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Does everybody remember what happened with that a little bit ago? Because I remember.
I paid no attention to it.
Oh gosh, you sweet, sweet innocent children. Where's a good picture of it? I should have gotten a good picture of this. All right, this is what I have for now, which is not. There's a better bad photo. But in the Discord
what
chat right there.
on
Oh
earth
wow.
happened there?
I'm putting like
I feel like that's
it's
not
so
realistic.
bad.
Like, that's not... that just...
Oh, and it's even worse in
Oh,
motion.
God.
It's so
yeah,
bad.
that proportion... those
I think you
proportions
get the
are
gist,
all off.
Yeah, like oh gosh, and you haven't even like you can't even see your spine in that. Which character is this? I need to her spine.
Oh yeah, it's true. Yeah, that pose is not
it's
like
so bad.
What is that pose?
Okay. I think her name is Pyra. Oh no. That's the well, I mean this is also like this isn't really a purport like the main like first of all, like the whole thing about how women are weapons in this game is weird. Like I've seen clips
what
of
about
it. It's very strange.
What?
There are all these like all the weapons that you get in this game are like connected to a woman that is like embodies the spirit of that weapon or something. I don't know. It's really uncomfortable in a lot of situations. It's really not great. But this was the most egregious proportion. I still which character is this? I want to like I it seems like I'm spending a lot of time on this, but you have to see this.
The character I think you're thinking of is Dahlia.
Okay,
oh my god! What even?
Oh wait, not here. Oh yep, that's it. Where is it? There's like a oh here we go. Here we go.
I think that screenshot that you have may be a glitch, actually.
This one?
Yeah, that is just the camera. That is just perspective. That is just perspective, actually.
Are you
I am
sure?
positive.
Are you 100%
yes,
sure?
From what I've seen, there are a bunch of different people posting that specific pose is, like, not right.
Okay, but even
still, those proportions are ridiculous. That is absurd.
Looks really funny.
It is so bad. And just like there's I don't want to get too into it.
That is too much. There's a line and it has been crossed thoroughly.
Wait, so both of those you think are a glitch?
It's maybe it's not a glitch, but that it is that angle, that weird downwards angle is what makes it look even more weird. Like, it's already weird as is, but that angle is what just pushes it over the top. It is the camera angle, I believe. Like, I'm looking at both of those poses. They are the same pose. It's just the camera angle is what makes all the difference.
Are we looking at the same photo?
One you posted. Like, those two images there, aside from where the character is looking and holding her arms, that is the same stance. Like, her head is turned upward and her arms are at her sides on the picture on the right.
Yeah,
but other than that,
I get that.
The same pose.
I mean, that's just... Okay. Her spine is in front of her legs.
Yes, it is.
That is not a normal thing
I mean,
to
it
happen.
looks like she's supposed to look like a rabbit, I want to say, so that might be part of the reason why the body is not designed right. Like it is not built like a human, I'll tell you that much. It is very much not built like a human.
I think the moral of the story, though, is that
something is wrong here.
This is probably...
This is not right.
This is one... when we go to getting... How did this get greenlit?
Yes, I agree. Just there is something very, very wrong here. This should have been stopped.
Even if this is a glitch, you gotta be... No. No. I'm sorry. No. So there's that. So I think we're pretty much agreed that video games, particularly ones that take on sort of, I don't want to just say anime in general, but like the very particular like consumer level fan service anime sorts of things are not the greatest when doing bodies for women. Is that... Do we have a general agreement on that here on the podcast?
That doesn't even look comfortable.
It looks like her spine is broken. Her spine is in front of her legs. Like, even if this is a glitch, I still want to make fun of it. It's in front of her legs. Like,
Actually, yeah, looking
like,
at another screenshot I'm seeing, like, that... hang on, because... Okay, just take a look at this one.
Her hands are
like,
so
okay,
big.
so that one, there's, like, a weird, like, it looks like just right above her hips, like, her chest suddenly, like, juts forward for some reason, and that isn't in any of the other screenshots I'm seeing.
Her entire stomach.
That is different from the other screenshots I'm seeing. Like, this here is another, like, full screenshot. You can even see the UI of the game. So just take it, like, it's still not right, but it's better. Like, it's not as bad. Like her spine is not completely detached in this photo. Like, that looks more, like, her spine looks fairly normal there. Like, actually, believe it or not, like, the spine curving forward at the hips is actually, like, not too uncommon of a thing. Like, not quite to that extent, but, like, the picture above, I think that is a bug. I think that is a glitch in the above picture.
Okay, but I would agree that, like, that is closer to the standards of this type of fan servicey art style. It's still, like, I'm no biologist. Pretty sure that's not how spines work. So I think we can all agree that video games aren't always the best.
Anime is trash. Wait.
But I did want to offer a counter story to that. So I don't know how many. I don't remember how many people are familiar with Overwatch, at least in terms of its characters, not necessarily like having played the game or whatever.
Yes.
Are we all familiar with the character of Widowmaker? Because I have a fun story. Okay, so Widowmaker is probably in terms of just the design, there was some controversy with Tracer about certain poses and stuff, but, like, in terms of just, like, literally the design of the character, Widowmaker would probably be the one where it's most like, hey, you're doing that thing again with the fan service. But I actually had a friend who has a story about it where one of the criticisms lobbed at Widowmaker's design was that she is 69% leg.
That's physically not true. Like,
well, here's
like based on in terms of if you're talking about in terms of height, that is patently false. Even in terms of like maybe even like body mass or something, just no. Like 69% is like, I mean, the fact that it's 69% and not 70% makes me think it's intentionally an exaggeration.
There's that. But okay, but here's the thing, because even if that number is wrong, here's the thing, right? This friend of mine, she is a very tall person. She went and measured herself, and she is 63% leg.
So it is based on height, you're saying?
Yeah.
I feel like that's...
She is a very tall person with very long legs and a pretty short upper body.
I feel that life.
So I think it is important also when you're talking about, like, proportions that don't make sense, quote unquote, or, like, just body proportions in general. It's important to remember that, like, there are people who do exist at extremes, and, you know, just because they don't, like, they are at certain extremes of height or certain lengths of body parts or certain sizes of body parts, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be represented in games or in media in general. Where problems arise is when you start saying, like, hey, wait a minute, all of these characters have this very particular thing that also lines up with general unrealistic body expectations for people, where things come into play.
I mean, as long as... I don't think it's a bad thing to do, as long as you're not trying to promote, necessarily, I should say. As long as you're not trying to say that this is the best body type, or that this is some kind of goal that should be reached. Like, as long as you're just saying, this is a body type, rather than this is a good or bad body type, I think it's fairly... I don't think it is gonna do much harm. It may be ridiculous and hilarious, but I don't think it's too much of an actual problem. And heck, even in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there's another character with way more off body proportions, and that's Boreas. See? Look at that. Completely unrealistic.
Is this a dragon whose
face
is
his head is down there. His head looks like Navi from... So that's his head down there. That's one of his hands up high, and then he has his other hand just to the right of his head, like the little short nub, like because it's tucked in, so he can like pull it
I
out and
hate
it
all
stretches.
these large right hand unrealistic
Yeah,
body
no.
proportions for men. It's just so hard
Yeah.
to love myself.
It's like, see, as long as they're not saying, see, this is what you should be going for. Although if you say it for this, it's clearly sarcastic. And even for a character like Widowmaker, as long as nobody's saying, as long as the game isn't going around saying, this is what you should try to look like, I think it's harmless enough. As strange or ridiculous as it may look, I think it's, in practice, it's harmless.
And it also helps when there's like, more than one female character.
When there's such a big
in the
variety
cast,
of
so
body
Oh
types.
yeah,
even.
that's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think Overwatch does at least an okay job. Within the realm of video games, maybe specifically. I don't know. I'm not a super media expert on a lot of these things, so I don't like saying definitively like, yes, this does a really good job, because like there may be like another realm where it's like, oh yeah, no, they do a way better job. So that was that topic, unless anybody has other things they want to say.
Hey, GameCola faithful who have also suffered through Huttable Boyfriend, how tall do you, how like big do you think the birds are? Do you think they're like human-sized, or do you think they're regular bird-sized? Because, honestly, I have no idea.
Didn't Diana say they were regular bird-sized?
I have no idea.
I think that's just what Diana thinks.
Did they not show them?
They show pictures of birds.
Then I don't know. Then I think
they don't give you any other information. So, if you find proof of any theories, let me know.
Yeah, tweet Anna,
please, because I need to know, and I haven't played the game in several years, and I apparently need to bring it back up.
Yeah, so don't make birds think that they have to be the size of people, because you're setting up unrealistic body expectations.
That's just not nice.
Okay, so continuing on, we have another question, or another email, I should say. It has many questions in it, and so since there's actually 6 questions in this email, from Patrick Humphrey. Thank you, Patrick. And so we probably won't spend as much time on each individual question as we did, just so that we can, because we are coming up on a bit longer. This podcast is going to run a little long, so we'll try to address these sort of a little more quickly. So the email reads, "Greetings, GameCola staff. Come to think of it, this will be read on the podcast, so greetings, GameCola faithful. Anywho, I have a few questions for you today. Question 1. What video game character do you think would be better suited in a franchise other than their own?"
Ooh, that is a really good question. Huh. Shoot, I have to think about that one. We're just gonna have like 15 minutes of silence, but yeah, we're gonna have to edit out.
I will say that there's a common joke that there's lots of Pokemon that look like they should be Digimon.
Yeah, just whichever ones have whichever ones have teeth that are way too realistic.
Is that what the
I don't know.
is?
Like, I just something about the reason I like Pokemon and not Digimon is because when I look at Pokemon, I say, oh, a lot of those designs, like, when I look at a majority of the Pokemon designs, I say, oh, that's kind of cute, or oh, that's kind of cool. Whereas with Digimon, I look at a majority of the designs and I'm like, oh, that's incredibly creepy for some reason. Like, I couldn't tell you why I find them creepy, but, like, they just, I don't know, something about most of the Digimon designs just looks unsettling.
Yeah, I've never been able to put my finger on it. I think some of it has been, like, stuff that kind of has too much of the quote-unquote anime eyes, or, like, stuff where, like, because, like, the thing about Digimon is that a lot of them have, like, some kind of technology sort of involved. And I think part of it, too, is that they also, the original Pokemon design, since it was, like, black and white Game Boy, or green and black Game Boy stuff, like, the visual patterns on them weren't very complex, because you wouldn't be able to render the fidelity. But then as the graphical fidelity increased, you could have more detailed and intricate patterns, which I think lined up with Digimon more, that was more based on an anime. And so, like, you could have those intricate visual designs that were then simplified to a game if you needed it to be. Yeah, that I think that has also contributed to this, like, joke of, like, Pokemon start looking like Digimon now.
But that's not the question, though.
Yeah, well, no, that would be these
Yeah.
Pokemon, and I
Oh,
couldn't
I
tell
see,
you
I
which
see.
off the
So
top of
it's
my head.
like,
Like Audino a little bit. I would be like Audino looks kind of like a Digimon.
I could kind of see that actually.
Like one of the little
Yeah.
forms of the Digimon.
Well, I would say that I would say that a lot of the characters from the Danganronpa games would probably work well in Ace Attorney, but that's just because they are two very functionally very similar, or thematically they are very similar in terms of, they are,
Hmm.
in essence, at their most basic, they are murder mystery games, murder mystery adventure games, and so I think they would pretty much all of them would work well. Like, even just in terms of how their characterization and all that, I think they would be pretty darn good Ace Attorney characters, just given how they are very colorful, quirky characters.
All right. Moving on to question 2. What is the worst game console you have ever played on?
Hmm.
Have any of us played any of like the like famously bad, like I like what there's the Atari Jaguar is really bad.
Well,
CDI
CDI is just
Zelda
terrible in
comes
general.
to
Yeah.
CDI. Zelda is most famously, I guess Hotel
Yeah.
Mario too.
I mean, most of the games just on the CDI,
Sure
not
was
just
nice
like.
of the princess to invite us over for a picnic,
Yeah.
eh, Luigi?
I mean, those are just memes because they're so bad they're good, but I mean, just most of the
Yeah.
games on that system
No.
were just bland and uninteresting. Like, there were no inspired, that those were consoles that just didn't have any hits, so to speak. They didn't have a hit game on the CDI. There was no such thing. And I think actually the 3DO might have had it a little better, but not much. Like, the 3DO didn't do very well either.
I once played in an arcade this like Pac-Man machine that was very clearly like weared and
Yeah.
weared and torn. It like the joystick like barely worked, and so what you had to do is instead of just like tapping it in the direction you wanted to go, you had to go like full like space pilot and be like, oh, I need to go down, and you just yank it as hard as you can down and hope that Pac-Man goes down, and you just gotta slam it in. And I'm guessing like there was some like a feedback loop in that of like how violently you had to move the control stick probably led to more like
Yeah,
damage.
yeah.
But you
He'll
just
move
had to
down
like
faster if I push
slam it.
down harder.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was like it just wouldn't
Yeah, I think
register.
in that case you would actually want to jiggle it a little bit. Like, you could pull down, but then you'd kind of wiggle it side to side while you're pulling down to try and like,
Yeah.
tweak the connection that it's making a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of it was like you had to like to get it to connect or whatever. Like it would have to go all the way to as far as you could go, and it was designed with like pullback. So like the further down you pulled it, the harder it
Snap
would
back.
sort of like pull back on you. And so if you needed to like basically bring it as far as it could go, you had to pull
Yeah.
pretty hard. And if you wanted to do it fast, you had to
Yeah,
like yank.
I see what you mean.
So
Yeah, they
that
have
was
pretty
probably
heavy controls on some of those things. And also, I think the controls, honestly, I think the controls in the original Pac-Man could occasionally just be a bit sluggish and temperamental to begin with. Like, even emulating that game, playing on a friggin' mechanical keyboard with basically zero input lag. Like, I still sometimes have trouble getting Pac-Man to turn. Like, I've had him miss corners constantly, and it gets really frustrating. But I think that it's possible. I don't know, but it is possible that just the controls in that game were a little bit finicky to begin with.
Yeah,
And that's probably what caused the initial trying to yank on it, and that might have been kind of what kicked it off.
Question 3 then. Also, we have what are your opinions on Nintendo starting to allow more mature games on the Switch?
As soon as they start allowing YouTubers and stuff to actually not be completely trashed by you and your policies, I will be quite happy with it. I will be salty at Nintendo for quite some time now. Like, I have massive praise for Nintendo and what they're doing, but I'm gonna tell you this, like, as much as I like seeing, I know this isn't really answering the question, but I want to say I like that Nintendo is starting to get their game to kind of get their act together, and and part of that involves them allowing more mature games onto the Switch and that kind of stuff. Although I think didn't the Wii U, wasn't it going to have like an exclusive like zombie survival game, like Zombie U or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very tame
Yeah,
zombie
it was
game as
very
far as
tame, but I
zombie
mean,
games
like,
go.
I can appreciate that Nintendo is getting more progressive in its, policies and that kind of stuff, and I think I really like to see it, because I really want to like the stuff Nintendo does, and I do like a lot of the stuff Nintendo does, and I feel like this is a very good thing that they are becoming more accepting of this kind of stuff, because that's just the way that the games industry is nowadays. But until they stop treating their creators like trash, I still honestly, there's just something I just can't. It's kind of a I'll see it when I believe it kind of attitude, and I can't really let up on that. It's like, wow, Nintendo's, they say, oh, we're going to allow more mature games. It's like, all right, well, now we've seen that you are, so that's good. But I that's one of the few things I still kind of don't know what to think about, because they've made so much progress and in some areas, and I think that's fantastic, but they've made so little progress or gone backwards in so many areas that I don't know what it says about Nintendo, like the company as a whole. It just confuses me more than anything else.
When you're talking about, are you talking about like the YouTube, like
Yeah,
demonetization
YouTube
stuff,
demonetization, and
okay.
just in terms of just letting creators express themselves. Like, not just YouTube demonetization, but any fan-made creations. Just in general.
Oh, you mean like fan games?
Like, heck, fans had the idea for Mario Maker. Like, technically, Shigeru Miyamoto did want to include a level editor in the original Super Mario Bros., but fans, years and years and years ago, the guy that makes Terraria?
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Spinks, made a game back in 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011, that was basically Mario Maker for the PC. And in like 2012, I think, he got shut down by Nintendo a couple years before they came out with Mario Maker. And it's like, well, you could have at least said thanks for him giving you all that inspiration. I mean, he wasn't even making money off of it. Like, if a fan is trying to make money off of a fan game, no. That they stop that right there. That I have no problem with them trying to shut down. But when they're doing something that is entirely non-profit, just to try and have a creative outlet to show this stuff, which is how some game developers get their start in the first place, and you just, without discretion, just destroy all of this hard work that they put into it, no. I have absolutely no respect for the people at Nintendo who decide that that is a good idea. I cannot respect them for that kind of policy. And I like what they've done. I just to stick with just the question and not my own opinions, I think that, yes, I appreciate that Nintendo is allowing more mature games onto the Switch, and I hope that it is a sign of even more progress in terms of, their policies as a whole.
To play devil's advocate real quick on this for you, because I'm curious on what you think about this sort of talking point that has been thrown around. The part of, from my understanding, is that like when it comes to like fan stuff like that, it can be sort of a gray area for companies, because like part of the way that you have to be able to hold on to your copyright is you have to take action against stuff that infringes on your
copyright.
That is
incorrect. That is incorrect. I have researched this.
Incorrect.
That is not true. Companies like Sega don't do that. Heck, Sega released a game on Steam that was basically a Sega Genesis emulator, and they allowed it to have Steam Workshop support so that fans could submit like hacks and patches in their own games to it. And people started uploading official, like, copyrighted Sega Genesis ROMs to the Steam Workshop, and Sega said, that's fine, go ahead. And Sega has not shut down very many, or if any, Sonic fan games or any other Sega-related fan games. They do very little with that. But do they still have full and complete ownership of their copyrights? They do. And if at any point in the future, like, for example, the Sonic fan games that have come out, like, Sega has let these fan games exist for years and years and years, but technically and legally, they still do have the total right to shut them down at any point that they want to. The whole thing is that they don't because they respect that their creators are doing it out of love for their series and not to, to leech money off of their copyrighted design.
But okay, so I see what you're saying there, and I agree that like, yeah, like this is Nintendo takes a very ham-fisted approach to this. But when you say that it is not true, are you saying because, hey, look, these companies are doing it and nothing bad has happened to them? Or are you saying there actually is not this legal rule that exists?
That is correct. There is no legal rule which says Nintendo has to actively... Copyright is passive until you decide to use it. Copyright is there, and it is always there until the copyright expires or until you want to use it. So you have copyright on these characters. So, for example, Pokémon Prism, a non-profit fan game, was in production for 8 years. They spent 8 years doing this entirely out of love and dedication for their series to show how much they love it, not making any money off of it. Nintendo shuts them down. Why? Because they wanted to. They didn't like it. Legally, they have no obligation. They are not legally required to take action against these projects in order for them to maintain control of the copyright. If, and Pokemon Uranium is another example. They did that, they knocked that game out too. But if they had not DMCA'd all of these fan projects, Nintendo would still have 100% legal control of that copyright, regardless of whether they took those projects down or not. They will always have this copyright, and they always have control over these characters. Whether they choose to act upon it out of spite and out of greed is another matter entirely. And that is what differentiates companies like Sega from Nintendo. Because Sega sees that they will have control of this copyright regardless of whether they actively try to take down fan games. In order to maintain all of the stuff Nintendo says about protecting its intellectual property is completely false. They have no obligation. They do not need to take down fan games or to DMCA YouTube videos or to monetize these YouTube videos in order to keep control over their intellectual property. That is what the copyright system is for. It's to say, hey, these people are trying to make money or trying to steal our idea and say that it's theirs. So stop it. That is what copyright is for. Or at least that that's what it should be for. Companies can certainly use it for other things, but they don't have to. And in my mind, they shouldn't, ever. It should be used to stop people from stealing from you.
Even if you're providing something... Because I'm still sort of playing devil advocate.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that I agree that Nintendo comes at this from a really ham-fisted point of view.
Yeah.
And I think they could stand to pull back. But you don't think there's... What I'm trying just to make it clear what you're saying. You have a problem with the idea of these people, even if they are working from a place of love and a place of admiration, some could argue that at the end of the day, they're providing something for free that Nintendo offers a paid service for. And
what do you mean by what are they offering for free that Nintendo has done?
So just a Pokemon game.
Yeah, a Pokemon
right?
game. So Pokemon Prism is not a Nintendo made game.
Yes.
So you are providing something for free, which is the majority of it, aside from the character designs and maybe some music. I would say that in terms of there is also the whole subject of fair use, and that is, a transformative work. In copyright law, there is a transformative use clause, which is that if you take an existing copyrighted work and you alter it to be something that is in part or in whole new, then it cannot be protected under copyright. For example, if you create your own Pokemon, you can say that it is a Pokemon, and Nintendo cannot legally take it down unless you're trying to make money off of it, in which case they would actually be going after the trademark or the copyright of the name Pokemon. But if you are just making a character design and calling it a Pokemon, there is nothing that violates copyright there. If I have... Now, I will agree that there is a more gray area of, say, putting a video on YouTube of me playing through a Mario game, in which case the only transformative content there would likely be my commentary on it. Like, people who submit playthroughs of video games without commentary, I can understand why Nintendo would try to monetize those for themselves, because yes, that is essentially providing you with a vicarious experience of playing through this game that you normally have to pay for free, but also at the same time, nevertheless, despite the fact that that is that you could heavily argue that is a good enough reason for Nintendo to go after it, companies like Sega still don't. Companies like Sega let you monetize those videos and get ad revenue for them because they also recognize that they're basically getting free promotion. And that's another reason why I hate it, is because Nintendo, honest, like, as much as they will say that doing, that kind of stuff hurts sales of their games, honestly, they have provided no statistics or any hard evidence to prove that is true. In my mind, they are completely that is completely false. They will never ever lose money from anything short of people pirating their video games. YouTube videos of someone playing through their games, even if that person monetizes it and gets the ad revenue that Nintendo otherwise would, the amount of revenue that they would potentially get from people saying, hey, this guy's playing Super Mario Odyssey, I've seen a ton of my favorite YouTubers play through it, let me go and buy it and a Nintendo Switch. The amount of revenue that they could potentially gain from that, by far and away, offsets the tiny amount of ad revenue lost by advertisements on that video. Morally, in my mind, Nintendo has absolutely, and I mean absolutely, no moral reason to do this. In my mind, all of this stuff that Nintendo does is 100% morally in the wrong. Legally, it is a gray area, and I accept that. But considering the trend of pretty much every other game company ever at this point, including ones that have been around for this long, there is no justifiable reason for them to do this. That's all I'll say. I've carried on too long. This is turning into just more of an angry rant. So we need to. I really, really like what Nintendo's been doing and how they've been getting more and more progressive in their policies. And I want that to be to also be. I want those improvements and that progress to be visible in how they treat their creators online, especially. Like, I really, really want to see that. So I am not optimistic, but I hope.
So that is now over. I don't know how that one got entirely addressed because we went on for a while on that point. But let's hit these last couple of questions and then wrap things up. So, question 5. Have you ever learned any life lessons from a game?
Probably.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my answer too. Like, probably, but I don't know if it's like to the extent of, yes, this is the thing that I learned from Super Mario Odyssey and I will take it with me for the rest of my life. Like, I'm sure, like, probably in more subtle ways, honestly. Like there have been elements of things where it's like, oh yeah, that's been highlighted for me, but I don't think it's quite as like, and I feel like that's sort of my approach with most media. Like, I try not to, for the one thing, it's like most media at some point is made like even like the most altruistic creators, and like shows where like there's a lot of heart and soul put into it. Like, at the end of the day, most stuff like either has to make money or has to gain, like, is made so that people will put eyes on it, even if it's being made for free. Like, YouTube stuff is for free, but like you still need to be constructed in a way that gets eyes on it. I personally like to be cautious about tying personal morals and values to things that are essentially products, even if like I understand how cynical that sounds. And I don't mean to say that I'm so cynical about every piece of media that I don't enjoy because, oh, that's just a product. I can't believe you're emotionally invested in a product capitalism. Not like that. But I just, in general, I try to keep my life lessons as sort of their own little thing that can be informed and understood by media, but not like necessarily rooted in media, in some kind of media property, whether it be video games or something like that. So that's my very esoteric way to dodge your question, Patrick.
Yeah, all right. I see your question. Here's how I'm gonna not answer it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say life lessons so much as just, like, I think I've probably just, like, learned just some general, like, good things. Like, like, not, like, big moral of the story kind of thing, but just, like, general, like, have I learned things? Like, have I been enlightened, I guess you could say, by something I've seen in a video game? I think that is something I think I definitely have experienced. I couldn't tell you, a specific example, but in terms of learning things or growing from playing through a game, I think that's, I think I definitely have.
In Valhalla, this isn't really like a life lesson, but kind of just a thing. One of my favorite characters has an existential crisis.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And it kind of like, when I first played the game, it was happening at a time where I also was going through an existential crisis. So it was kind of nice seeing, like, even if it isn't real, it's nice seeing something go through the same thing.
Did you mean, well, like, you yourself, or, like, you, the player character? Like, the player character was also having an existential crisis?
Me, myself.
Oh, I see.
And I?
No, she herself and Dorothy.
Oh, Dorothy, I love her. But the main character described how she went through her own existential crisis, and it kind of hit me, and it was nice to see that it's like, even if it's not real, it's like you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because somebody had to write that.
Yeah, and I think that almost kind of could qualify. I think that's actually probably the closest thing we have that can qualify as the closest thing to a life lesson, actually. I think that's, just the kind of, viewpoint you have on those kind of really deep issues.
I've only gone through regular stential crises myself.
Not existential?
No. What was that joke? Like 3 out of 10?
I don't know.
I give it 0 out of 10.
I was about to turn it from existential into extra stencil, which would have been even more of a stretch, so I'm glad we stopped it there.
Alright, final question. Besides the obvious Crystallis, do any of you have any video game playing traditions? Just real quick for me, I usually will play through Super Mario Sunshine, or at least play through some of it over the summer, just because, like, that whole game is just very summer, beaches and sand, and that's the best time where I can get into the mind space to play it, because there are lots of parts of that game that frustrate me. So, but like the early game is a lot of fun, and like just the general, like, yeah, it's summer. So, I would say not every summer, but a lot of them I will go and play some Super Mario Sunshine.
Every year, at least, probably closer to like February, or between like February and April, I'll play Night of the Rabbit and like at least one of the Deponia games, because that's around the time where I first played them, was like around my spring break a few years ago. That's also probably going to be a thing with 2064 also, is when like I'll play it probably closer to when I first played it.
But I actually do have a tradition that is still ongoing, which is that a while back, actually, my dad used to be, when we got our PlayStation 2 years and years ago, someone who I didn't expect, which was my dad, actually got into a lot of those games. Like, he beat Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and Dragon Quest 8, the Journey of the Cursed King. And specifically that game, Dragon Quest 8, I absolutely love it. So, and back when I was back all those years ago, I was so young that I did not make much progress into that game. So recently, I have been just spending a couple days over break, and just usually one of the mornings on the weekends, just making more and more progress through Dragon Quest VIII, so that I can try and actually beat it for the first time. And that is I think I'm up to like 50 hours in the game. I think when my dad beat it, his save file had like 113 hours. Because it's a really big game if you want to do a lot of the stuff that there is to do. And even he didn't do all of it. That's just a game I just enjoy playing from time to time, just for stretches, and just kind of go through it and just, all right, let's play this game. I always still enjoy it. Let's try and get closer to beating it. So that's, I guess it's not really necessarily a tradition, because it's not like I'm replaying it over and over, but that's mainly because it would take that would mean that in order to complete one round of the tradition, it would take me 100 so hours. So, but it's still something I do regularly.
Every year I play through the entirety of this game, and it takes me all year. And my tradition is at the start of the new year, I
do it all over
again. Yeah, I think that let's finish Patrick's email real quick. For now, that's all my questions. However, I have one more thing I wish to share. At church today, I was convinced that the deacon was trying to make Ace Attorney references. First, he mentioned the play Waiting for Godot. Then he said something about trials and tribulations. Coincidence? I think not. And then he writes, may your perspicacity and panache bring you plentiful popularity, and you'll pull wait, hold on. This is
Can you like paste
five
it?
syllables.
I want to see if I can figure out.
Hold on. Pulchritudinous. Pulchritudinous podcasters. I'll put it in the chat.
Let's see. Yeah, may your perspicacity and panache. I think actually that might not be. I think panache is spelled with an I, like Pinach. I could be wrong maybe, there, but yeah,
maybe it's British.
Yeah, may your perspicacity and panache bring you plentiful popularity, you pulchritudinous podcasters.
Oh, that's hard CH. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's pronounced like a K, kind of.
Yeah. And it says your devoted fan, Patrick Humphrey. Patrick, thanks. Oh, and also he included this fun little image that I don't think I can. My computer's not letting me download it right now, but it's like Waiting for Godot with like Ace Attorney characters like put on the like a movie poster or a playbill.
That's funny.
I'll try to put it in the article in the show notes. But thank you, Patrick, and I think that is going to be all the time that we have for today. So thank you for, first of all, letting me talk about Mega Man for half an hour. And thank you, our lovely fans, for giving us emails and stuff to talk about. We really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, be sure to check us out on our actual internet website, GameCola.net, where we post video game reviews and news articles and blog posts about all sorts of things. You can also find us on YouTube. gc.net, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, and the word net. You can find playthroughs of Valhalla and other video series and other playthroughs that are probably going to be coming out this new year. You can check us out on social media, right, Anna?
We have Facebook and Twitter.
Just search GameCola and you'll find us. We also have a Twitch where we do live streams. Just search GameCola and you'll find us. And if you want to be like our lovely friends, your mom and Patrick, you can email us questions or just in general, at the podcast at gamecola.net, where we'll read your emails, and if you want them read on the podcast, we can do that too. So thank you for listening. Have a wonderful year now that the new year has started, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day wherever it is. Happy New Year. This podcast is going up on January 1st, so have a happy 2018. living the dream.
Greetings from the past.
We'll see you, I guess, when you listen to this later this new year, but also next year for us right now. So yeah, those words that I said. Goodbye, everybody.
Are we not gonna
yeah, we should probably plug.
promote?
Oh wait, yeah, we should.
You gotta plug.
Plug. All right, I'll have to fix that.
Probably
Thank you
give
for
the
reminding me. I was
email
about to
too.
totally forget.